So the movers finally brought my stuff, and instead of sitting in an empty room, I'm sitting in a room full of boxes. Except for... Doesn't really make things any easier, though unlike Alberto Contador, at least all my bikes got here in one piece. Yes, Contador became the second pre-race contender to crash out of this year's tour earlier this week, and early reports seem to indicate it was caused by a broken bike, giving everyone a chance to remember how much they hate Specialized. Of course, it probably wasn't caused by a broken bike. Eyewitness accounts are pretty consistent in not mentioning a buckled frame and in saying that Contador was descending kind of like an idiot when he crashed. Nevertheless, NBC apparently did apologize. For those of you keeping track at home, that's misstating a broken frame 1, epic complicity in the largest doping scandal of all time 0. Also not eliciting any apologies, Team Rabo Liv for their apparently unfair racing against Mara Abbott in the finale of the Giro Rosa last weekend. The team swept the podium on GC and did make Abbott's life difficult on the final day's final climb. But if you watch the whole video, Abbott did have her chances to get free, she just didn't have the snap to take advantage of them. And as Rabo Liv DS Koos Morenhout points out in an interview at Podium Cafe, this was largely by design. The team rode hard in the early going to isolate and tire Abbott, and position has always been important on climbs, with contact not unheard of. I'll reference the famous photo of Ramon Poulidor and Jacques Anquetil on Puy de Dôme. Of course, the Giro Rosa was really just the first portion of the Evelyn Stevens Megatour, the second half being the now-in-progress Tourigen Rundfahrt. Stevens recently took the GC lead based on a strong time trial and then what appeared to be a two-rider break with Boels Dolman's Lizzie Armistead the following day. I say seemed because Cycling News hasn't really had any beyond the results sheet's reports on the race, and in fact recycled the prologue photo for the time trial. Since Stevens' team is sponsored in part by Specialized, maybe they can just strong-arm some better documentation out of the media. Not lacking in documentation is this week's t-shirt donor Hammer Nutrition. Seriously, this little red book is impressive both in terms of breadth of product offerings and specific details on how to use them. Hammer Nutrition, they make real endurance fuels, not candy. Though, they are pretty tasty. UCI President Brian Cookson tweeted out a link to a 3,500-word document last night, explaining in painful detail exactly how the UCI's anti-doping procedures work. This is good, it's something that they've needed for a bit, but there are some holes. For example, the document doesn't specifically cover things like the Therapeutic Use Exemption Commission, which was at the heart of last month's Inhalergate. But more importantly, it lacks basic communications tools, like an executive summary, or a simplified flowchart, or a... Okay, so let's say you're a historically ineffectual organization charged with regulating drug violations. Here's one way to announce a bust.
On the 6 o'clock news, we put a lot of f***ing dope on the table. A lot of it.
And here's the UCI's. What, you can't see it? Let me do a little special effects for you. There you go. Now, if you've actually watched The Wire, you know that the dope on the table character, Burrell, isn't the greatest, but 6 lines about Denny Menchov and Jonathan Tiernan-Locke and seemingly arbitrary results removal really raises more questions than answers. I understand and respect the inclination to be, as one Twitter user put it to Brian Cookson's approval, consistent and robotic in announcing dope offenses. But as we saw with Contador's frame, once you've lost the good graces of the public, people will go through some pretty serious mental gymnastics to make you out to be the villain. If the UCI wants to restore any faith in the sport, they're going to have to make a more concerted effort to win back hearts and minds. If I've read the epic doping procedure document correctly, there's nothing stopping the UCI from releasing the facts of a case when a sanction is given. Some charts with a little color might be nice, things that highlight the primary evidence and shed light on the rather complex phase in which biopassport cases are decided. The UCI is currently hiring a head of marketing. Maybe instead of adding another academic legal person as the job description specifies, the organization might want to consider someone who could actually market what the UCI does to the world. After all, I think the sport deserves better than Bill Rawls.
And when you list the cases, put a little dot next to each one. Deputy likes dots.
I'm Cosmo Catalano, and that was The Week in Bike.